Hey everyone, Dr. Frunkey here with a really exciting new knife consult for you. Before we get into the knife of discussion today, I want to show off a couple of knives here. If you follow my channel, you'll know that I picked some of these knives up recently. This is the Terzula BT1000 collaboration with Three Rivers Manufacturing. This one was all plain silver, but then I sent it off, as well as these other two, to my buddy Nathan over at SpadeKnifeWorks, and he gave me a hyper edge on it, and he gave me this absolutely wicked blue and gold anodization. He also did a green on the Spyderco Myrtle. So this one is Frunkey green. I have a big plan for this knife coming up in the Christmas time here. He put a nice edge on that very wicked blade right there. A very interesting blade. And then he also put a nice edge on my Carter Chuprin BBM. This knife is finally the knife that it was always meant to be, and I'm so thankful to have this one back. But the knife of topic today is going to be the Spyderco Sliverax. The reason that I mentioned Spade is that this knife is also modified by him, in that there is no flipper tab. This is in fact the knife that just came from Nick Shabazz, that has the flipper tab delete. So very interesting knife right here, designed by Paul Alexander, the same guy that designed the Spyderco Ouroboros. That one also had a very fateful run-in with Mr. Shabazz in terms of the Teflon washers. But let's break this knife down a little bit here. We've got right at about 3.5 inches of cutting length on the blade. It goes all the way back to the handle, so you're really maximizing your cutting length there. 3.75 inches on the actual back to the pivot. There's about an 8-inch length overall. You're looking at about 4.5 inches of handle and about 4 inches of grip area right here. I can bring out the calipers so we can see what kind of thicknesses we're working with right here. The handle width is about 0.45 inches, so nice and thin, and the blade stock is 138 thousandths. So a nice robust size on the stock, but a nice thin profile overall. Let's bring out a couple of other relevant knives for comparison right here. We've got the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. Here is a Spyderco Shaman. So you can see this is a slimmer knife than either of these two, while the blade size is going to be relatively similar. Here's a Spyderco Manix 2. I've got a whole lot of Spydercos in my collection going on right here, but these are some of the relevant comparisons. So notice how much slimmer this one is and sort of unique compared to these other ones. But I will say that ergonomics remains at the highest sort of standard in the Spyderco lineup. They definitely care the absolute most about ergonomics of almost any company I've seen. Here's a ZT0392. Here is a Shirogorov F3 at a 4-inch blade right there. Why don't we bring out a couple of other similar knives here. Here's a Gavco and Custom Knife Factory spinner collaboration right here. Here's another knife that Nick Shabazz loves and is sort of weird looking. Here's a Olamic Busker going on right here. How about a Giant Mouse GM3? And last but not least, let's do a Benchmade Anthem. These knives were also modified by Spade, and we'll be getting their own dedicated videos coming up in the near future. So now you've got a sort of an idea of the size of this thing and where it sits in the Spyderco lineup. Let's go ahead and break it down anatomically. Up front is a full flat ground blade of S30V, which we discussed has about 3.5 inches of cutting length. It's a beautiful thing to see the edge come this far back to where even the handle is almost in the way of the cutting path, and it's very, very interesting. They've really maximized the cutting edge. Again, they've included no sharpening choil, but if you send it to a guy like Spade, that's no big deal. The full flat grind is very, very, very effective, and it's super nice for slicing and everyday cutting tasks. This works well in food prep. This works well in opening boxes. This is just an ideal blade shape. You just cannot complain with the Spyderco full flat grind. It is the ultimate in usability. It has no real jimping on top, but that's okay. This falls into more of the light-duty EDC category. Let's move it back to the pivot here. This is probably the most interesting part of the knife to me. If you look in there, you're going to see some very intricate milling and a couple of other things. You can see the ball bearing washers with the bronze look to them right there, and you see how close they are in proximity to each other. So just think of the complexity that's gone into the engineering within there. If you go ahead and watch Nick Shabazz's takedown video, you'll see that it is quite complex on the inside there. There are 2 stop pins. There's one here and there's one right there that actually serve to support the knife when it's open like this. And the bottom one, actually this works while the knife is closed. So it's very interesting and very complex. They put a lot of thought into that. Now, originally this knife was a flipper, but Nick did not like the way that the flipper tab protruded into the compression lock area. Now, I will say that the Shaman suffers from sort of a lesser version of that, where the actual finger choil projects into the compression lock area right there. And that's a bit of an annoyance to me that will come up in the final diagnosis video. But here it was even more exaggerated, and so he actually had it sanded off. And in fact, this knife is actually wonderful the way that it is right now. It's very easy to spider flick it out. It's very easy to thumb flick it out. And the detent is actually strong enough that the knife doesn't just randomly come open, but you know, it's just the right amount of detent for that. So in that sense, this knife is now an excellent Spyderco, and I'm perfectly happy with it. The finger flick is probably my favorite of all deployment methods because it just seems to be the one with the least amount of finger acrobatics required. So I really enjoy that. Moving back, we've got this compression lock right here. I will say that this is the one part of the knife that it still annoys me at this point, in that this is rounded off. I really don't think that that was necessary, and in fact, it makes my finger slip a little bit more than I would really like. The Shaman actually has a bit of knurling or jimping almost on that tab for traction, and then the Paramilitary 2 has got a larger, more robust tab right there that's not rounded off. And so I'm really just not a huge fan of this. I don't think that this is an improvement on this system, and I think it needs to go away just because it's less secure. And I imagine with the flipper tab in there, it makes it even harder to actually maintain a grip on it. So I wouldn't mind seeing that go away. Moving back to the handles, these are pieces of G10. There are some liners on the inside there that are not milled. That's totally fine. This knife is pretty lightweight as it is. Speaking of which, I didn't actually take the weight, so let's go ahead and do that. Wait for it. Okay. 3.22 ounces, so quite light on this knife. So even without the milling, if they had milled those liners, maybe on a Sliverax 2, it might even fall under the 3 ounces, and that would be really, really amazing to have a knife that light. But it's very strong. You can tell that it's going to be tough on the handle. The handles are going to be tough, and they're going to stand up to a whole lot. There's really no flex whatsoever going on there, built with these nice solid standoffs going on here and a very, very small lanyard tube on the back. The handles themselves are extremely ergonomic. I love the way they fit in the hand. This actually reminds me significantly of Elijah Isham's type of handle design, where your finger gets locked into the front choil right there and provides a nice ergonomic sort of shape to the blade. It also angulates the blade downward to promote a nice cutting angle. And this one is no different. This one has a very ideal slicing angle. So if you're push cutting, if you're opening a box, if you're cutting something tough, you're going to have a nice angle on that. If you're opening up a letter, no matter what way you hold this knife, it's actually quite ergonomic and quite comfortable, and it allows that blade to have a nice aggressive angle for cutting. So I actually really, really like that. I attribute that to Mr. Alexander and his knife design. It's a little skinny in the hand, but I do have a full grip on it. The way that this swells in the back in your hand is quite nice, and it provides a solid grip. Even without jimping, this knife is really not going to go anywhere in your hand. You have a very positive grip, and I like that very much. What I don't really like is this carbon fiber type fake carbon fiber where it's one sheet of carbon fiber glued to the top of a G10 scale. That has got to be my least favorite of all Spyderco combinations, mostly because I know that it's fake, and I spend all of the time knowing that it's fake, and it cheapens the knife to me. So I wish that it was just plain G10 or that it was just all carbon fiber. This kind of hybrid material is not really ideal. It also has my favorite Spyderco clip, perfect going in and out of the pocket. I have no complaints. I wish they would do more knives with this. So what are my final thoughts on this knife? It's a little bit weird. I can't say I would recommend this knife over any of the other Spydercos you saw on the table right now. I would recommend all three of those other ones before I recommend this one, because I just don't think that this one has really been fully realized. I appreciate that they did a Spyderco compression lock flipper, and I hope to see more of them in the future, but this is just kind of growing pains. So thanks for watching, guys. This is Dr. Frunkey saying take care.